So we're about to start one of the most frightening subjects, Jewish law.
And tell her to put you on the waiting list if it's a long wait, just so you're only here for a short period. That's so wonderful, lovely, amazing.
So our class, I think we have 1.5 classes today because of the bris, the Hoffman family. We're going to end at 12:30. So we have about an hour today, and we're going to have another class next week. And I don't know if there's going to be classes in Nissan. We will send out updates. The basic Chabad will send out updates regarding whether there will be classes set for that time. But most likely that's when everyone has to implement what we're learning about, so there's not going to be time to learn about it. So we have to do that now. So what we'll do is the following. So first we'll start off. This is a great book, was just released last year, is available in Eretz Yisrael for the first time this year. You have all your Pesach questions answered here, including questions you didn't even know you should have had. It's a great book. I know the author personally. I can vouch for the book, for the material of the book. And so, being that we don't have a lot of time, and we obviously are not going to be able to cover everything. So I want to give the option of which subjects you want us to focus on for today's class and our next class, and I'll give you the options that are available. Some of these subjects we have covered in other years, those who have been to my class other years of Pesach, while some we have not. Cleaning for Pesach and Bedikas Chametz we've covered in other years. If you want to do it again, I'm more than happy to do it again. That's one option. Another option is Pesach foods, which is like, kosher for Pesach foods and products. That's a lesson in and of itself. We can do that. We can have a whole lesson on Pesach chumras. We can have a lesson on mechiras chametz. We can have a lesson on koshering and other subjects that I'll leave out. I think those are the options that we can put on the table. So again, one option, Pesach chumras, Pesach foods, kitnias, etc., mechiras chametz, and cleaning for Pesach. What is the decision of the congregation? What should we do? You want to do mechiras chametz?
What does everybody want?
What? Products? Cleaning for chametz we've done in other years. Pesach chumras.
So is that's online?
It should be. It should be online, but I have to check to verify.
She put something today.
I have to verify.
What about catering?
Koshering, yeah, that's its own subject. That's its own subject. Koshering, does everyone want to do koshering? No, koshering. Koshering?
That'd be nice. Thank you.
Okay.
Yay.
So we'll do a little bit of a compromise. Okay, I'll begin with a few of the takeaways of chametz-related checking and cleaning for Pesach. Just a few highlighted takeaways, and then we'll go into koshering laws. Okay.
Koshering for Pesach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So again, I'm going to begin with with just a little introduction of cleaning for chametz and bedikas chametz. Okay, so a review of the background of the mitzvah. There are a number of mitzvahs associated with Pesach. We have 3 negative commands associated with the prohibition against eating chametz. We have a positive and negative command associated with the prohibition of owning chametz. One of them being, thou shalt destroy chametz from his midst, and the second being, thou shalt not see or find chametz in his possession, which does not mean you can't look at chametz during Pesach. There's no prohibition in looking at chametz even on Pesach. The prohibition is having a link of ownership. So if I don't own it, but I see it, it's not a problem. So if you happen to walk into a store that's selling chametz, you don't have to immediately take the blowtorch and burn down the store. You can just leave the store or stay there and look at the chametz and contemplate how you're going to eat it after Pesach. But there's no prohibition against seeing chametz on Pesach. that is the wording, even though that is the wording in Scripture, that is referring to b'chol gvulecha, in your possession, if there is a link of ownership. So based on this, we can understand that if we relinquish ownership from our chametz, then we don't transgress any prohibition of owning it. Because if I don't own it, how can I transgress owning it? So that is what created the idea of selling your chametz to a guy, which we all do. And that's what created the idea of nullifying your chametz for Pesach, saying kol chamira v'chamia, that I view my chametz as the dust of the earth, which we say on after checking for chametz, which is this year going to be on Thursday night, and on Friday morning when we again do the beer chametz, we say it again. We say it basically twice. So that whole Aramaic prayer is not really a prayer; it's us relinquishing ownership of the chametz. Now, so this makes it sound very good. So you mean I don't have to clean for Pesach? All I have to do is either sell it to the guy or relinquish ownership, and I'm being machmer and doing both. I'm doing both. I'm also relinquishing ownership by saying kol chamir, and I'm also selling to the guy, so I don't have to clean for Pesach. The answer is, biblically, you're correct. Biblically, because you've done this, you don't transgress owning chametz on Pesach from a biblical perspective. However, as you can imagine, the Chachamim came in and they put a restriction, an injunction against relying on this biblical ability to simply, Pesach would just be too easy. It'd be too easy. You just say, I don't own the chametz, I'm relinquishing ownership, and you don't do one thing to clean. How would Pesach feel? Right. Well, that's not why the sages did this, because they wanted us to work hard.
The guy don't buy all the crumbs,
he buys everything. No, he buys everything. Yeah, everything. We sell him everything. Yeah.
Even the crumbs.
Even the crumbs. Yeah. So, so the answer is like this. For two reasons, the Chachamim said it's not enough to rely. We're not going to allow you to rely on the biblical ability to just disown or sell, and we're going to make you actually clean your house. Okay, so there were two reasons. Reason number one is because one of the reasons why the Torah was so strict against owning chametz. Other non-kosher foods you're allowed to own. I'm allowed to own pork. I'm allowed to own, I'm even allowed to own basar v'chalav. I'm allowed to own non-kosher foods. Yeah, Chachamim said don't own it for too long because you may come to eat it. So if you by mistake bought something non-kosher, don't leave it in your house forever. You have 1 to 2 months to get rid of it. But it's no owning prohibition that I have every second I transgress. It's only chametz we find this by. Why was the Torah so strict? The reason why the Torah was so strict is because eating it is so severe. A person who eats chametz, it's a penalty of kares. We don't find such a penalty by any other non-kosher food. So in order to protect, for the Torah to protect the severe prohibition against eating chametz, they said you're not even allowed to own it, because when you own something, chances are you'll come to eat it. So the Chachamim said the same thing. Being that if you have chametz in your possession, even if you don't own it, there's possibility you'll come to eat it. Therefore, we are prohibiting leaving chametz in your home over Pesach, and you have to either you have to get rid of it and burn it before Pesach, which is what we do by beer chametz, or you have to sell it to a guy and put it in a designated area, which is what we do, right? We have the closet and we put it in the closet, sold to the guy. So all chametz has to be either segregated or expelled. But no one's allowed to just be around anywhere they want. The chametz can't just be around. So this is the background behind the whole idea of bedikas chametz, of why we check for chametz and why we clean for chametz. It's to fulfill this rabbinical injunction. Now let's make it clear that in the event that someone forgot to sell his chametz to the guy, which happens, and he forgot to say the statement of kol chamira or didn't understand what he was saying, which happens, then he has to biblically clean his house for chametz because he never relinquished ownership and never sold it. So at times, even today, the bedikas chametz, the cleaning of the home for chametz, is actually biblically required, not just rabbinically. But if you follow the normal standard of selling your chametz to the guy and saying the nullification, understanding what you're saying, which is relinquishing your ownership, then it's completely valid. So there would only be a rabbinical reason for cleaning your home for chametz. Now, why do we say this? We aren't just biblical Jews, we're also rabbinical Jews. So what difference does it make if it's biblical or rabbinical? If we have to clean our home for chametz, we're going to clean it. As I say, let's cut the chase and get to the halachas. Why are we giving this whole introduction? So the reason is because the main reason of why the sages enacted their obligation is so you don't come to eat it. We're going to see that in certain cases they said, okay, you don't have to clean there, or you don't have to clean that area, okay? You have to clean this chametz because you won't come to eat it. The reason behind the decree doesn't apply. So it's enough for you just to sell your chametz to the guy or nullify it before Pesach. So that's what I'm going to review right now, a few of those details. So the general rule is as follows. The Chachamim obligated one to search his possession, not just his home, but all his possession, whether it be a car, a storage room, his office, a vacation home, Kenyirbu, whatever it is. Everyone has an obligation to search their possessions for chametz if, that's the big if one of two things have happened. Either number one, you remember entering chametz into that area even one time since last Pesach, or you don't, but it's common while you're snacking or eating chametz in a meal to visit that area to retrieve something. But if it's not, I don't ever remember entering chametz there, ever. It could be I did, but I don't remember. And it's not common for me to enter this area during a meal, then I don't have to check the area from chametz. Now you may ask, but what if there's chametz there? What if there is? I want to just be safe and check everything. So the answer is that, again, let's go back to what we said. The minadin, biblically, you don't have to check anything for chametz because you're relinquishing ownership. You're doing mechiras chametz. You're saying kol chamir. The whole reason why today we're cleaning for chametz is because of the sages' decree. The same sages who decree clean for chametz despite the lack of biblical transgression told us certain areas that you have to clean and certain areas you don't have to clean. They're not worried about those areas. Even if you happen to have chametz there, you didn't transgress anything because you didn't own it. So in the event that it would happen that you walked into this area that you didn't have to clean, let's say, for example, a practical example, most people's, let's say, winter storage closet where they store all their winter clothing, okay? So you're not usually, I don't think you usually go into the closet and eat chametz there or leave a pack of crackers inside that area of the closet. So assuming you don't ever recall doing such a strange thing, number one, and assuming that it's not common while you're snacking or eating a meal to go grab your winter clothing, again, it may be possible, but it's not common, then you don't have to worry. Now, it could be that the pockets may contain chametz, but if you put it through the wash before you restored it before winter, then when we put something through the wash, it kills the chametz, so we don't even have to check it. That's why you only have to check clothing that didn't go through the wash prior to the last use. So basically, before Pesach, we only have to check. It says wait until the day of the 14th to check the pockets, and on that day you only have to check the clothing you were wearing before the last wash, and right now. So it's really not a lot of clothing that have to be checked. You do not have to go through all the laundry you just washed and check the pockets. Now you may say, well, what if a kid left like a whole, So the chazak is the kids eat all their nash. They don't leave whole things in their pockets. That's probably just crumbs, and it's been destroyed. Okay, so that's an example of an area where you do not, according to Allah, have to go there at all into this closet and look for chametz over there. Now, if it happens to be that you got cold one day, chalamed, and you went in there, and lo and behold, you see a whole osam cake lying there. And you try to think, how did this end up there? And then you begin interrogating your family members, and someone says, yeah, I wanted to hide it, I didn't want anyone to see, and then you discover you didn't transgress a thing. You did your part, you relinquished ownership, you sold to a guy, you weren't obligated to check there, you transgressed. Now, what do you do with this cake? So if you did mechiras chametz, then it's not yours, it's the guy, so just leave it there, don't touch it, leave it there in the top closet, it's closed up, no one goes there. Leave it there or put it together with the guy's stuff. If it wasn't sold, then you're right, then destroy it on Pesach. But the fact, even if you would have to destroy it on Pesach, if you didn't say chametz to the guy, you still don't transgress because I did nothing wrong by not checking that area. So the idea is that even though we have our own ideas of cleaning for Pesach, Halacha has a very defined definition of what has to be clean and where has to be clean. And this is important, that a person should limit the stress and anxiety specifically to the areas that actually need to be cleaned. Don't have anxiety over areas that you don't have to clean. If you want to do it as a mitzvah minah mufcher, go above and beyond, that is, go ahead, Baruch Hashem, that's fine. But there's no need to have anxiety over that, etc. Other examples of areas that don't have to be cleaned is any area in which chametz is stuck in and I can't get with my hands, with my bare hands. If my bare hands can't reach the chametz, whether it's a crack in a furniture, or a lot of times you have chairs or couches in the areas that you can't reach chametz. So if you can't reach it, you don't have to clean it. That's the rule. If you can't reach it with your hands, you don't have to clean it. Because explain to me a little bit how you're going to come to eat this on Pesach. How are you going to come to eat this chametz on Pesach? How is that going to happen? Your hands can't reach it, so how is it going to happen? So we don't suspect. It's possible that a rat will come and take it out. It's possible that ants will come and travel the chametz out. It's possible. But again, not everything that's possible do we have to suspect for. And as the Gemara in Pesachim says, and recorded in Shulchan Aruch, if the Gemara actually asks the question, maybe a rat will come. So the Gemara answers, Ein lo davar soif. If I actually had to suspect for all the possibilities, then we would be cleaning our home for Pesach 24/7. Because even if I cleaned everything, went above and beyond, I bleached my entire house, literally, the whole house is bleached, okay? Everything was destroyed. What guarantees you that the next second a rat or a cat or an ant didn't carry chametz from outside into your home? Now, once again, you have chametz. So if you want to suspect, you'll have to be bleaching your house 24/7 the entire Pesach. So because the Chachamim didn't give us a mitzvah to become a shogunez, and they said, do your part and don't worry about the rest. So therefore, we don't have to check these areas minadin. However, the custom is to do the best that we can to get rid of it. So if we can put a vacuum cleaner there, we get rid of it. If we can throw bleach on it, we throw bleach which destroys the chametz. Obviously not on a couch, but let's say it's in a crack in between the tiles. But to undo furniture, to undo your car, in your car, to undo the seats and unscrew them and take them out, it's a nice thing. You want to do spring cleaning, it's beautiful. But it doesn't have to be part of the Pesach list of the must. The must is simply do the best that you can for what your hands can reach. You can spray the rest with bleach, and you're good to go. Other areas that don't have to be cleaned, min hadin, and this is a little tricky, is under heavy furniture. So if you have heavy furniture, let's say bookcases and heavy appliances. So as long as you haven't moved it within 30 days, meaning it's since Purim, you haven't moved it since Purim, and follow what I'm saying, don't move it, okay? Don't move it till Purim, from Purim until Pesach, because then you enter into the problem. So if you haven't moved it, okay, and it's already been there, it's like this. I want to clarify the point. It's a little tricky, but I'll give a few case examples. I have a book, let's say a bookcase, okay? This has been here for the last 5 years. I don't have to take it apart every single Pesach and look under it to make sure there's chametz, even if I know there's chametz there, because if I can't reach the chametz with my hands, it's sitting under the appliance, then the halacha is that it's enough to disown the chametz that's there. There's no chance you're going to come to eat it. So I don't have to go ahead and undo the furniture or move the appliance. However, if I went ahead and moved the appliance, let's say I went ahead and did it, then there's a difference between if it was done within 30 days, meaning from Purim, or beforehand. So I'll give an example. I had I had a washing machine and dryer newly installed into the laundry room. So if this was done prior to 30 days before Pesach, I don't have an obligation to undo it now and move it and check under it, because this is not an area that commonly contains chametz, the laundry area. I don't commonly eat my meals there. So because of that, if I haven't moved it within 30 days for Pesach, the sages never said go ahead and remove it and check under it. So that's okay. But if I went ahead and, let's say, installed it from Purim and onwards, or if I moved it Doesn't matter, I moved it for cleaning purposes and now moved it back, then I have to check it for chametz. So any appliance that you have moved within 30 days before Pesach, if you didn't do b'dikas chametz when you moved it, you got to do it again. You have to redo it. You have to. So therefore, the best thing is just not to move things. Now, if it was moved before 30 days in an area that chametz is commonly found, let's say your oven, okay? So if my oven sat in the same spot for the last 12 months since last Pesach, it hasn't been newly installed, it's been there the whole time, then even if I know that chametz got under there, I don't have to undo it and check under it. I don't have to do anything because it is sitting on top of chametz that I cannot reach, and I can therefore rely on my relinquishing of ownership from it.
You're talking about a big oven, not like a little oven.
Absolutely, I'm talking about a big oven, yes. And I'm not saying that you don't have to clean or close off the oven. I'm just talking about moving the oven, moving the appliance to check under it, okay? So, but if, let's say, the oven, I bought a new oven 6 months ago and I installed it in my kitchen, then what you should do, and know this for the whole year, whenever, this is what I always do, whenever you move into a new home or whenever you purchase a new appliance and you're having it moved in, you should wait till nighttime, check it for chametz, and then put the appliance on top, and then I'm good to go. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to have to move it again before Pesach. Now, if it's just a movable oven, it's not really such a big deal. But if it's something that is installed into your wall, which often is done today, okay, for different reasons, right? We saw about the ovens installing it into the wall for safety features, right? So the wall, so it doesn't fall over. So if whatever is also maybe more complex, it's not simply just pick it up and move it. So especially also a bookcase, to undo the whole bookcase. And so in all those cases, you simply check it before you put it there, before you move it there. So let's say before you move, let's say you're moving right after Pesach into a new home, do b'dikas chametz to the entire home before you move, the night before you move in. And that will save you from needing to undo any of your set appliances that don't move, from having to undo it before Pesach. Okay, we can also, this is the little introduction I can give in this before we reach kashering, but I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone has on the subject of cleaning for chametz.
I do. My husband and I keep our bikes in the house because they're very expensive bikes.
Right.
Do we have to clean our bikes?
Well, if the bike contains areas that it can contain like actual chametz, like a basket, then yeah, look at the basket, make sure it doesn't have, a basket of cookies,
But not like the tire.
Any chametz that would be in a tire would be considered destroyed.
Okay.
So, okay, I'll bring up that point as well. It's brought down that crumbs of chametz that are on the floor are considered already self-destroyed chametz. In fact, when we're going to have, I think it's Tafshin Pei Aleph, in 2 years from now, if I'm not mistaken, Pesach is going to fall on Motzei Shabbos, so Erev Shabbos is going to be, we have plenty of time. And Pesach falls on Motzei Shabbos, so obviously the question is, we can't eat matzah, so we can't have matzah for the Shabbos meal, but chametz we can only have until a certain time. My whole house is already clean for Pesach, and how can you clean on Shabbos? So one of the things it says to do is that take all the crumbs and throw it on the floor, and when people stomp on the crumbs, that is as if they're destroying it. So from here we learn that crumbs on the floor that people can step on is considered self-destroyed, so you do not have to clean your bike. And I will mention that you can assume, even if you've cleaned your floor with bleach or whatever else you decided to do, you can assume your floor is chametzdik, and that's why there's a minhag amongst the Pesach chumras that many people keep, is that if a food falls on the floor, we don't eat, we peel it. We peel it before eating it because we assume that there's chametz on the floor. Even if there wasn't chametz, in your house, we walk around outside. We didn't check the whole world to make sure there's no chametz. Right? That people threw out their chametz, which is perfectly okay. You're allowed to throw chametz flour onto the ground outside, and that's considered destroying it, getting rid of it. But people step on it, so chametz gets carried to different places. So obviously, in that situation, I wouldn't lean my hand on the tires and then eat something.
No. We'll do that anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So shoes, you don't have to bother with the bottom of the shoes.
Absolutely not. Very good. The chances are that there isn't an Oreo cookie stuck inside your shoe. Chances are it's just a few crumbs, and those crumbs are considered self-destroyed. You don't have, first of all, they're ownerless. That's number one. Number two, even if they weren't ownerless, they're considered ownerless by the fact they're less than the kazayas, and they are dirty, and they are crushed with your shoe. So it has all the reasons of why it did not have to be gotten rid of or checked for. Which, again, would be superfluous, because if that was required, you would have to do that basically every time you went outside. So you walk a step, you do bedika. You walk another step, you'll never get anywhere. To stay in your house the whole Pesach.
Somebody
Yeah.
once said that you have to like clean your wedding rings because you could have gotten like hundreds.
Right. So wedding rings is interesting, or not just wedding rings, any ring. Any ring, because we, many women, Baruch Hashem, need flour, right, and need baking goods. So if you aren't accustomed to take off your rings while you do so obviously, dough can get onto it. Dough is a very sticky substance, as we know, and it can get stuck even in, minuscule amounts, and we obviously don't want it to be consumed on Pesach. It's not really such an issue of owning chametz because it's less than a kazayah, so it doesn't really follow the obligation of the issur of owning, even rabbinically, but it certainly is a hazard of eating. Practically, you may come to eat. So, I'll give you another example of that type of idea, where you're allowed to own it. We don't say the problem owning, but it's a chance you may come to it, so we say don't bring it to the food, don't bring it to the table. Back in the day, it was very common to use wheat starch for starching clothing. Today we use cornstarch mainly, but there still may be places who use wheat starch, and you should really find out. If your clothing is being starched, look at the starch that's being used, or ask the laundromat, what are they using to starch your clothing? Many places, especially third world countries, use wheat starch. I know in Brazil they use wheat starch. They use flour to starch the clothing. Yeah. In Brazil, it's very common to starch all the clothing, even the undergarments, everything. They're not biased against any article of clothing. Everything gets starched together with the laundering. Oh yeah, it's one of the things they do. I remember when I was there and I gave my clothing to the maid, I'm like, what did you do? You turned these into crackers. Like I could crack, literally. But that's what they do. They said, you guys don't know how to do laundry. This is how we do laundry. So if they're using wheat starch, then you have literal chametz in your clothing. You're walking chametz. You're a walking ball of chametz. But nonetheless, it's not a problem because this is edible. Who's going to start chewing on their undershirt? Who's going to chew on their shirt? Nobody. So there's no issue of owning it. It's not considered. It's not like a piece of cake. It's embedded within the material. So there's no owning prohibition at all in this. But however, there is worry that if I have a very starched thing, you move your shirt, that's all. The flour can go into your. No, it's brought down. So therefore, it says don't wear it to the table. Don't wear it to the table.
So how about washing your
So again, bottom line is that with the rings, the best thing that you should be done is just to clean it. Just clean it with, if you can use bleach or use any cleansing material that will clean it without destroying it. Do
That's
it.
it, you need. But another thing is how
It's a good idea even if you don't need, because your rings get everywhere.
okay. And how about your sheito? Do you have to wash it before Pesach?
Do you have to wash it before Pesach? So we don't find any discussion in the poskim, not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of anyone who discusses this, that head coverings need to be cleaned or washed before Pesach. I mean, the concept of a toupee and pe'anachris was not invented 50 years ago. This is talked about in the Talmud. So, and I don't think that there was the worry of chametz getting into your toupee or wig started in this generation. There were always kids around that jumped around and got food everywhere. That's not something new to today. So if it's something that was common, they would have mentioned. So being that the concept is not something very common, you don't have to suspect for it. However, at the same time, is it a good idea? Can this be viewed as an extra step of scrupulousness? Absolutely. I'll give another example. Forget about a toupee or a wig. What about your hair? Your natural hair. Maybe you have, right. Well, it doesn't. That's the whole thing. It doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch that you have to make sure to wash your head on Erev Pesach before Seif Zman, Seifas Chametz, because just in case you have crumbs of chametz in your hair. We don't have such a halacha. Now, growing hair on the head is not something that happened 50 years ago. Everyone has hair on their head. So why didn't they mention it? Isn't it kind of important?
In the man's beard, there'd be for sure some chametz if he didn't wash his beard.
But it's right. It's not.
Sure
Bottom line is that, as I'm saying, it wasn't suspected for. If you know it has chametz, like if a kid went ahead and did a practical joke and spilled a bag of flour on your head right before the 6th hour of the day, then you know, yes, you've got a problem on your head, in your hands. But if that's not the case, you don't have to suspect that there's food stuck on your body. We don't find such a precedent to worry about such a thing. But it's very similar, by the way, to brushing teeth. That's why a lot of places can say that brushing teeth is just a chumrah, because everyone had teeth and everyone ate food prior to the poskim of 100 years ago discussing this question. So why did everyone miss it? Like, they tell us where to clean in the cracks, but your own mouth they don't tell us about? Obviously, food in the mouth is not considered food anymore, so they didn't suspect for such a thing. And that's why they didn't write. There's no halacha that says, do bedikas chametz to your mouth, 5 minutes before seif zman achilas chametz. No such halacha. Is there such a chumrah? 100% is a chumrah, and we follow it.
Even drink almost boiling water
Right. So yeah, there's a lot. Listen, we all know there's many chumras, and if you want, we can do the chapter of Pesach chumras. There's many chumras. Not to put them down, we do them, but I'm just saying is that if you ask, is it obligatory to wash, a toupee or a wig? The answer is it's not obligatory. If you know that the chametz spilled into it, flour spilled into it, anything like, then it's a good idea, and it's a good idea b'chlal. They put out notice all the time regarding strimels. Many strimels have. The story is with, I believe it's with Shmuel Salant, who was the Rav of Yerushalayim of the Eida Charedis in the early 1900s, and either him or was a member of the community of his at that time, that they're of course very scrupulous in all the customs and laws of cleaning for Pesach, and he's sitting down to eat his soup, matzah ball soup, on the night of the Seder, and all of a sudden he sees literally a grain, a wheat grain, floating in his soup, and becomes shocked. And he went to Reb Shmuel Salanter and he asked him, maybe the whole chicken's treif, maybe everything's treif, the vessels, there's nothing more scary than finding chametz in your soup bowl on the night of Pesach. My whole kitchen's treif now. So he was freaking out. And Reb Shmuel Salanter told him, again, it could be this happened with Shmuel, so I don't remember, but the content is the same. He said, did you check, is your strimel, is it the same strimel you wear the whole year? He said, yes, we'll check your strimel. Let's check your strimel. He took a strimel, he shook, and a whole bunch of grains came out. Why? Because now what are grains doing in somebody's strimels? The reason is because back in the day it was very common by different simchas to throw grains. Today we throw candies, but back in the day they would throw grains. So the grains would get, some people throw rice. A lot of Sephardim still do it today. They throw rice, which is just kidney, so it's not a big deal, but an actual wheat would be a problem. So he says it's not a problem. It probably fell right now as you were bending over. It fell into your soup. So, but nonetheless, we don't see a precedent that you have a chiyuv to actually go ahead and clean your shrine. But is it a good idea? Sure, it's a good idea. It's a good idea to use common sense, to do whatever you can to prevent chametz from entering your food.
Are we going to talk about if essential oils are from it?
That's in the section of chametz products. So we're going to do kashrut, so we want to do kashrut. But
So did he have to throw out the bowl of soup that the grain fell in?
absolutely,
But
yeah.
then does the bowl itself and the spoon also have to be set aside?
And it didn't, probably not, because it's probably klish lishi, and that's what machmin. The chatchil were machmin a lot of things on Pesach, so that was, I'm sure Shmuel Salan took care of, but I'm sure he had him and his wife were able to breathe free when that was their smallest problem, just to segregate that bowl for the rest of Pesach. That's they were worried about their whole kitchen. Okay, any other questions on cleaning? That's it? Unbelievable. We covered everything?
Okay, of course, it's really. Okay, in your siddur, obviously you use your siddur every day, and it's on the table, and it's surrounded by.
Right. Books. So you want to know if you have to clean books.
Yes. Not the bookshelf, but the siddur that you use every day.
Right, so the
What
bookshelf-
fits in-
Bookshelf definitely has to be cleaned in the areas that you can reach. Many people read books while they eat, and it's a common area. Even if you don't remember ever placing chametz by the bookshelf, it's a common area where you will go to while you're eating or snacking. So it definitely has to be checked. So you have to move the svarim around. You have to take them out and look to make sure there's no chametz there. But the svarim themselves, we don't have to check for chametz min adin. And even if we did have to check for Finadin, it would be extremely difficult to do so because you would literally have to open every single page and inspect at night that there's no chametz in the crevice area. So, just doing like this, it may make the Jewish conscience feel very nice, but it actually doesn't accomplish the halacha if the halacha were to be that it had to be cleaned. Now, how many of us are able to sit through like this in every single book and inspect in between the crevices? So it's not required, as it's less than a kazayas, it's just a crumb and it's most likely dirty. Even if on Pesach you happen to open a book and you saw a crumb of chametz, would you instinctively put your finger there and taste it? Maybe if you lost a bet you would do it, but definitely not instinctively. Nobody instinctively would do such a thing, so the gzeir of the chacham doesn't apply here.
But you shouldn't put those books on the table.
Oh, 1 second. So I'm going in order. First, I'm discussing if you have to check. So checking is not required for books. Now, books that have been around chametz all the time, like benchers, you just sell it, you put it away, you sell it with all the other chametz. And in general, the rule should be followed not to bring any svarim to the table at all, because even though we may not have to check it for chametz, and there's no prohibition of owning chametz for the reasons we mentioned, that doesn't mean it's not chametz. It's chametz, and if we eat it, it's a grave prohibition. So therefore, in all these situations, we should never bring any books to the table unless they are Pesach books. Which reminds me, what do we do with this book now? He's staring at chametz for a long time. Okay, well, we have a few extra. I'll have to use a different one. Anyways, okay, so that's just, again, it doesn't say in halacha you can't bring the book to the table. That's using common sense to prevent something from happening. Okay, are we ready for koshering laws? Okay, so the laws of koshering is discussed in two chapters in Hilchos Pesach, even though koshering has to do with all non-kosher foods and is not specifically relevant to Pesach, but in the Shulchan Aruch, this is where it is mainly discussed, in the laws of Pesach. And there are also special stringencies of koshering that we follow specifically when we kosher from chametz to Pesach, and there are also leniencies that are applicable when we kasher from chametz to Pesach. So we're going to learn about all of that, okay? And what we want to learn is koshering vessels and, of course, koshering appliances and how that is done in minadin and according to minhag and according to scrupulousness and stringencies, how all this is done. So let's first begin with a general introduction into cleaning your vessels or appliances from chametz. So the Alter Rebbe records in the Shulchan Aruch that even vessels that you don't plan on koshering, you don't plan on using them over Pesach, they need to be cleaned from chametz. You have to clean them from chametz to the best of your ability and put them away in a closet. And the reason for this is because since vessels and appliances are used for food during the whole year, we suspect you may absent-mindedly come and use this vessel or come and use this appliance which has chametz on it. Now, this can be a very daunting task to go ahead and clean all of your chametz vessels and everything. And but the truth is that most people don't, cook pasta in their pot and then put it away with the pasta in the closet. So it's anyways clean, so you don't have to do anything to it. So it's not. So let's talk pots and pans and knives of chametz. They're pretty much cleaned already, and you don't have to, you don't have to do anything more to it. But what you do have to do is put them away. In an ideal situation, what ideally should be done is that we should have a chametz closet where we take all of our cutlery and all of our plates and all of our pots and all of our vessels that we use for chametz and put it all over there in the segregated, secluded closet, locked up with a key, and we put away the key. The Alter Rebbe writes, hide the key, so you can't find the key, or padlock it, or do whatever. Put a special security code. Connect it with the, security of the house. If anyone opens it, the alarm sounds off. The point is, the Alter Rebbe says that you should really go to far stretches to make sure that it is really secluded well. The idea of just leaving it where it is and putting a piece of tape there is not ideal. It's not the ideal method, but this is often the practical method. So if a person doesn't have extra closet space to create a segregation closet to all the chametz stuff to go into, so due to lack of choice, we aren't able to fulfill this segment of the halacha. And what we do is that we close it up. Now, how should it be closed up? So when it's closed up, it should be closed up the best way possible. Putting a piece of, a piece of tape, you can break through the tape in a second. You pull open the drawer. That should not be done. That definitely does not suffice. Person should try to. You can get those plastic handcuffs that tie two drawers together, or if a closet opens up both sides, so you tie that together. That will prevent a person from opening it, and everything of the like. Everyone should try to think of a better way to close up the chametz kelim. Now, this applies even if you plan on selling the kelim to a guy. If you say, well, I have, let's say, a sifter here. It's very impossible to fully clean, so I'm including in the sale to a guy. That's fine, that's okay, but that doesn't exempt one from needing to close up his closet properly so he doesn't accidentally take the vessel. So when it comes to koshering, we have a few different levels of koshering. Meaning how an item is koshered is based on what was its use during the year. What did I use it for? How often was it used for this? It was used for chametz? Was it not used for chametz? Was it used with hot chametz, cold chametz? And what do I plan on using it for now? Okay? So we'll just begin one of the important halachas, and that is that any item which was never used with hot chametz, I never put hot chametz on it, it's only used for cold chametz, and chametz never soaked in a liquid inside of it for 24 hours, it's in essence doesn't need koshering. The koshering it needs is cleansing. All I have to do is clean it and that's it. So for example, if I have a kiddush cup that all I use it for the whole year is kosher for Pesach wine, and that's it, and I never wash it with hot chametz, I don't leave it, the silver becher, I don't leave it together with chametz, then from the letter of the law, it would not require koshering, because there's no way it absorbed chametz at all, and all it would have to do is maybe a touch, it's next to challah, so maybe a touch challah, all I have to do is just clean it. Practically, there are certain of these cases where machmer anyways to kosher it, and cups is an example, because sometimes a person may eat challah, for example, and a crumb may fall in the wine, and that wine may stay there for 24 hours. And we know that there's two ways an item, a vessel, can absorb taste. One is through heat, and the second is through soaking for 24 hours. So if it's soaked 24 hours, it's a problem. But if that concept doesn't apply, that it's not something that would soak in it, then technically it doesn't have to be cleaned at all, and the cleaning is simply to go ahead and wash it. So let's take that example and give some practical examples of where we wouldn't require koshering and just a mere cleansing would suffice. Okay, so one example would be your fridge cabinets, the drawers inside of your fridge, or the platforms inside of your fridge that you put your stuff on. That doesn't need a hot water koshering. First of all, number one, you're not eating off of it, and even if you were, you don't cook in there. And it is possible that there was spillage, of chametz, let's say, for 24 hours. That is a possibility. Once again, in such a case, we don't eat off of it, and we don't put food directly on top of it. So in such a case, it suffices doing the most basic level of koshering, which is a simple cleaning with water and bleach. And the same thing applies for all closet space areas. All closet space areas, it doesn't need koshering. It suffices with simply cleaning. And the minhag is to cover it with a lining. So we line it with tinfoil, we line it with whatever we want to line it with, paper. It's not required from the letter of the law. From the letter of the law, once you have cleaned it and you look with your eyes to see at night that there's no chametz, you did bedikas chametz to it, it's good. It's good to go.
You don't have to do the lining.
You do not have to do the lining, and I'll bring you a proof you don't have to do the lining. are you allowed to kasher a pot that was used for pasta the whole year to use for cooking chicken soup on Pesach? Is it permitted?
Yeah, I think so.
Of course it's permitted. That's why we have the laws of kashering. Now, why don't we require someone to line it with paper or tinfoil before you're cooking it?
Because it's not going to cook.
So that's my proof that we don't say that even after you've cleaned it, we still suspect maybe there's chametz there, so please line it as well. It's a minhag. When you can do the minhag, you do it. Obviously, you can't do it when you're koshering your spoons and you're koshering your plates. You're not going to line your spoons and plates with tinfoil. But, you know, if it's inside your closet, the shelves of the fridge, or the drawers of the fridge, it's not a big deal, and the custom is to do so due to suspicion. You know, chametz has been around this area for a long time, and we want to distance it as much as possible so there's no loss, and we go in and cover it. However, we have to remember to perform bedikas chametz to it before we cover it. So if we're cleaning out our closets and we're cleaning out our fridges, we have to make sure before we line it, wait till nighttime, and at nighttime turn on the light, inspect. You see there's no chametz.
With a candle?
No, you can use you can use the light of the room, as long as it's, you know, glaring down on it, or a flashlight. As long as, you know, it's a good inspection light, and you've inspected, it's good to go. So now line and you're good. You don't have to do anything again when it comes the night of the 14th. You don't have to check it because you already did check it.
Yeah. You often mention bleach as the ideal.
Because it kills. Bleach kills.
Yeah, but when you are allergic to chlorine, as I am,
Yeah,
I just
so
can't
soap.
use it. So what would be
Soap.
the next best one?
Any soap, any
Plain
detergent.
soap.
Yeah. Soap also kills.
Thank you.
When you say it's a minhag, and I heard once that like if a minhag is like done amongst a lot of people, then it becomes like a halacha.
Yeah, it's true. So we definitely say that you should try to do it. Yes, we definitely
It's
say.
confusing though, because it's like it's a minhag, so you don't have to do it. You should do it. Like it's,
This is a minhag that didn't listen. There's minhagim that made it to the Shulchan Aruch, and you know, we follow the Shulchan Aruch.
okay.
And then there's minhagim that didn't make it to Shulchan Aruch. That, you know, it's different families, different areas, different cities. So obviously, if that's the tradition, if somebody, for example, doesn't line their stuff, we can't tell them they're going against halacha. They're not going against halacha. If they didn't receive such a minhag to be machmir in it, then they don't have to be machmir in it. There's no problem.
Okay.
So you don't have to line them if you've done the decat chametz and you're good to go and it's clean? There's nothing-
Minadin, yeah, you don't have to line anything, minadin. But again, as I said, there is a minhag to do so. But this minhag, it could be that originally when this minhag was, it was because people put food directly on it. Most people today, we don't put any food directly on our shelves anyways.
No.
Nobody, you know, pots you put directly on. But
Pots
you
on
know,
the table. Sometimes.
right.
Well, you don't put a piece of meat on the shelf.
Yeah, you don't put a piece of meat. The chance that you'll end up eating chametz
Or anything else.
is, but nonetheless, a lot of the minhagim we do for Pesach don't make sense, and they don't have to make sense. It's just we do things to distance it, even though we don't really understand how that is going to prevent anything from happening, because how would anything happen to begin with? Nonetheless, we go ahead and we do it.
I just want to ask, for the last 5 years, I've gone to my other apartment in a pool and made Pesach there. This year I'm staying here, so Michaela and there. So I said, well, why don't we just kosher our pots here? We have a pretty much gluten-free kitchen anyway, so they really haven't touched any chametz all year. And Marshall had a fit. He says, no, the minhag by Lubavitch it has to be all
But this is a very
Michaelim.
personal question.
Uh-oh.
Keep it for the end.
So what should I do?
Right.
Can you keep it for the end? It's personal. No, we can't relate to that. And the time is very short today. So, yeah.
No, her question is important. It's actually the next thing
Yeah,
we're
but-
about to discuss. It's number 4 is about new kalim versus koshering. That's our next subject. It's okay. We're gonna touch upon it, and that is this. Before I want to touch on one more point before I touch upon that, and that is that chametz vessels that are around chametz, etc., that you don't plan on using for eating purposes, do not have to be koshered at all. So an example of that would be that the Nagelwasser cups, the basins, the garbage cans for Pesach, all that stuff doesn't need to be koshered. In fact, the Nagelwasser cups and basins doesn't need to be clean. Garbage can, I can understand. It has chametz in it all year, so you clean it out. Definitely doesn't have to be koshered. And the Nagelwasser cups and all this stuff does not have to be koshered at all. You don't have to go crazy with cleaning it. You clean it, you look at it, and it is okay, good to go. Even if it absorbed chametz during the year. One time a piece of biscuit was left in the Nagelwasser cup for 24 hours. You're not drinking from it. You don't plan on drinking the Nagelwasser cup. So it's not an issue. Our next subject is regarding buying versus koshering. Okay, buying new vessels versus koshering them. So obviously buying new vessels would be the most mahudr way, but also the most expensive way of dealing with the issue. When you buy new and it's never been used for chametz before, obviously you escape the whole idea of any chance of there being chametz in the vessel or in your food. But nonetheless, we find that because the sages implemented the koshering laws and the Torah implemented the koshering laws, a person should not say koshering is b'diavad. Koshering can be done even l'chatchila. Now there are some people who are machmir, not necessarily dafka b'Chabad, but there are some people who are machmir not to kosher anything for Pesach and buy everything new. Again, there was a book that was published in Hebrew for halachas of Pesach, and they actually wanted to write this, and I made them take it out. That it is not to write that you have to buy new vessels according to the minhag, and we don't kosher things. I said that's not accurate. You have to take it out, and they took it out because I showed to them it's not accurate. They took it out in the end. So definitely, if a person wants to kosher vessels because it's either easier or they don't have the money to purchase new things for everything, or there's certain things that are special, so there's no problem with doing so. And some write that even someone who wants to be machmir and buy everything new, he should have at least one thing that was kosher to emphasize the laws of koshering, that we can rely on it and that it's real, it's true, it's not just a matter of b'diavad. Now, this doesn't even touch upon a whole separate discussion, which is, do you have to kosher new vessels? So some poskim hold that all new vessels that you buy need to be koshered. Why? If they're made of metal, because we suspect that perhaps in the processing of these vessels, they had non-kosher oils pressed into them. Let me give a little background about this, and this has nothing to do with Pesach. This is throughout the year when you buy something new, which is kind of funny because those who follow the chumrah of buying everything new for Pesach usually also following the chumrah of koshering it, which means you're anyways relying on koshering, so why are you buying new? It's a little bit of an oxymoron, but at any event, when chumras pile on chumras, it doesn't have to make sense necessarily. But the reason why is because often in the manufacturing of vessels, of utensils, in order for it to be slick and stick free, so they hydrate it together with oils. And often these oils are not from only vegetative sources. Sometimes they're actually from animal fat sources, which would of course be a serious kasher shaila. I'll give an example. It's called the cast iron pots. So as you know, cast iron pots, the way they're made, if anyone has them, is that they have to be oiled, I think, every year or every 6 months. You have to re-oil them. So when you first buy it, it comes with enough oil inside the metal. You don't see it. You can't pour it out. Put it upside down, the oil will come out. But when you cook, it releases. And that's how it's stick-free. So what oil did they use? So if they use a non-vegetable derivative, meaning animal derivative, they didn't use kosher meat. They use treif meat. So because of this suspicion, you have some hashgacha companies, such as of Landau, that they kosher all new vessels, everything. Spoons, knives, pots, pans, everything. They don't ask questions. They kosher everything, even if it's brand new, to the suspicion. However, minadin, first of all, number one, most vessels don't go through this oiling process with non-kosher oils. Number two, even if they do, there's a big argument in the Poskim to suggest that this oil is considered destroyed before it ever entered into the pot due to the heat of the crafting of the material, and therefore it's considered pre-destroyed before you. It's considered koshered before you need to kosher it. Because of this, basically we have bottom lines like this. Some are accustomed to kosher new pots whenever they buy them, or new vessels whenever they buy them. The widespread custom is not to do so, and it's not a chiyuv minadin, unless, of course, you know otherwise. If it came out that a certain company was using non-vegetable derivatives and you have that pot, then go ahead and kosher it. If you bought a cast iron cookware, then before you buy it, look up what the company uses, because there we know for a fact it is entering oil in the material. What oil do you use? You can just send them an email, tell them, listen, I'm allergic to all animal products or fowl or fish products.
Or just say you're vegan.
No, but they may not respect that. If you use the word allergy, that means lawsuit. Allergy and lawsuit comes together. So if you use, so if they tell you, then they have to take you very serious, and hopefully they'll say, no, it's all vegetable derivatives. But they will most likely, to protect themselves, answer, it's completely vegetable derivative, but we cannot guarantee, just to protect themselves from liability. But that is a good enough answer for us that
They do make pots with Halacha on them.
they make, for this reason, for the people who don't want to have to kosher it. Correct.
So how do you kosher cast iron?
Cast iron is a big problem how to kosher it, because everyone knows that doing hagala to it is not going to get rid of all the oil. Right. So you have to actually do libun. You have to do libun chamer, which is basically you get rid of the whole reason why you bought the cast iron pot was for the non-stick, and you get rid of the non-stick by having to get rid of all the oil. So the best idea is that get a vegetarian cast iron pot. Don't get a fleischic cast iron pot that has pork or other oils inside of it. The most common ones that they used is lard, for those who use animal derivatives. From my research, what I understood is that most cast iron manufacturers, at least in the United States, use a vegetable derivative and not an animal derivative. But since it is possible, especially in Europe, where they have tremendous excess of lard that goes to waste, and people buy it for very, very cheap, it could be that they do use a lard derivative, which of course would mean pork-flavored food in the cast iron pot.
Yeah, but specifically about my cast iron skills that have been used for 20 years, all vegetarian, to make that a Pesach.
So that just has to do hagala. You do hagala. Yeah, hagala, unless you've used it for baking. Have you baked, meaning without water?
No, I have baked. I have baked my my bread in it in the oven.
If you use it for baking, then it needs libun gomer.
Okay.
Okay, Mirz Hashem will continue next week. All the different detailed laws of past what we just discussed, of how to kosher and what needs koshering, etc. Okay, we're going to stop here for today, as we said.